Wow, look at this. So now we have Bitcoin breaking not only back into the range, but we hit 62,750 and now we're hovering around 61,000. That's caused a beautiful green day in the alts, and we're going to talk about some of these alts that are exploding. But the big thing that people are now saying is, could this fractal over here actually be playing out? Are we playing out the same fractal as in COVID time 2020, where the market broke down because of a black swan event and then started to recover and went all the way up to Valhalla? And we saw that over here on this tweet, and we saw the same tweet over here, and coincidentally one of these tweets was actually done before the event actually happened. That's what we're going to be talking about today. Also talking about today, if you look at this chart here, one of the big calls that I made in Frontrunners in our Discord was that the guys should load up on 𝗬𝗎. And as you can see today, 𝗬𝗎 has been one of the best performers. I'm going to show you why 𝗬𝗎 is going to be one of the best performers. And then we're going to discuss whether it's going to be 𝗬𝗎 or one other blockchain, which is going to land up being bigger than Solana. So, Friday Banter, big show, guys. Let's go, guys. Listen, after the week that we've had, it's so nice to come back on a Friday and to see the bubbles green, to see Bitcoin breaking back into the range over here and actually hitting 62,000. Most of that was actually a short squeeze. I was actually watching that last night, and you could see that as soon as the numbers were going up, the leverage was closing, which kind of means that was shorts that were getting liquidated on the way down. But even after the short squeeze, we are back in this range, and now a lot of people are talking about whether we're actually going to follow this fractal over here and then take us up to the all-time high. That's one of the big things that we're going to be talking about. We're going to be talking about the reality of this and the fundamentals that actually maybe say that this is going to happen. And then we're going to be talking about 𝗬𝗎 and whether 𝗬𝗎 is going to be the L1 that catches up to Solana, whether it's going to be one of the other ones. That's going to be one of the things we're talking about today. But before we do, I do need to remind you that this show is sponsored by NordVPN. Now, it's very important that we all understand a few things. The first thing is, if you're watching the show, you're a fucking legend and you're going to make a lot of money in this bull market. But it's not about making money, it's about keeping money. And I mean, if you lose a few trades here and there, that's not the end of the world. But if you lose your money because of a hack, or if you lose your money because the government says in your country says, hey, you shouldn't have been surfing certain DeFi protocols and you were, then you're an idiot. The only way to change that is to mask your IP address. And if you want to mask your IP address, the only way to do it is to get a VPN. Now, $3 a month. You're going to make a decision today as to whether or not you're serious about your crypto. If you're serious about your crypto, then getting a VPN for $3 a month is nothing. And it protects you from hackers and it protects you from the government. And if you do that, you also get one of their virtual SIM cards, virtual eSIM plans, which effectively gives you SIM travel wherever you go. If you want to do it and you want to support the channel, go to the bottom of the video, click on the nord.com. Guys, I know you've been contemplating doing this every week and you've always postponed it. Don't wait until it's too late to do this. Please do this. And also, when you get it, also get the threat protection. And the reason why you need the threat protection is because the threat protection protects you from those malicious sites. There's a whole lot of malicious sites, which basically what they're designed to do is to steal your crypto. Now, Nord Threat Protection actually protects you from those sites. What you need to do is you need to go get Nord, and you need to go get Nord Threat Protection to protect you. I don't know why my link's not opening. We'll get a new link in there. We'll get you from there. All right, so guys, definitely the most volatile week of the year. Let's see how our guests are feeling about the volatility this week. Guys, I mean, we've all been here for a while. Did anything this week scare you? Tom, what do you think? Did anything scare you this week?
Nothing scared me this week, honestly. I think if you look at just from a macro lens, all of the things that you'd want to see, we had unemployment tick up a tiny bit, but wages are under control. We still have consumer balance sheet exceptionally strong, strongest in almost 40 years. If you look at percent of debt to GDP or disposable income, excuse me. We have fiscal stimulus coming. I just tweeted about this morning, but we have 50 billion in stimulus coming, kind of stealth QE purchases by the Treasury. Election cycle dynamics are immensely positive. If you look historical data, Q4 of election cycles, you see 5 to 10% increase in spending relative to GDP. So like you have this enormous confluence of circumstances, and you had this very small blip on the radar that caused an enormous unwind in positioning, leverage, and especially in sort of more volatile markets where people were positioned for the kind of unwind quickly. But long-term, the structural, very positive story is still there for the back half of this year. So, I mean, I was very excited to buy this past few days, and honestly, the most excited I've been since probably the COVID crisis to buy, which a lot of people are maybe on the other side of that, but yeah, I'm very excited right now to pick up positions.
I must say, I did share the same sentiment as you. I didn't buy as much as I wanted to buy because I almost thought that, like COVID, this wouldn't play out over 2 or 3 days. Like COVID took 30 days to play out. That dip was about a 30-day dip. And it's only 30 days later that we realized just how broken the system was and how much they were going to print. And so, I did some buying, but it looks like now we're back around the $60,000 level and things aren't that cheap anymore. Mando, I know you had some views about what was going on. How are you feeling? Do you think this Japanese cash and carry trade thing is now finished, or do you think we just put a little Band-Aid on it and we can just live to fight another day?
No, I don't think it's finished. And that's why I was a little bit more cautious, actually. I definitely was scared on Monday. As I felt like tech stocks could continue to unwind. I still do, actually. When I look at like the Magnificent Seven, they all run up pretty hard. And I think everyone's been told to buy every single dip in these coins. And I don't know. I saw anecdotally that JP Morgan thinks that about 50 to 60% of the trade has been unwound, the yen carry trade. That tells me, and I don't think we're getting an emergency rate cut. Jobs missed by around 60K. There's no reason for them to do an emergency rate cut. So I still think we have another month or so of uncertainty. What I do think is that crypto outperforms. I think we were the only risk market open on the weekend, and crypto got hammered on that Saturday, Sunday, and then it only really rebounded as soon as the NASDAQ opened. I think from here on in, I think tech stocks could still be a little bit wobbly, but I think crypto probably looks a little bit stronger.
Why do you think that crypto rebounds here? Crypto is effectively, you could say, underperformed on a risk-adjusted basis, underperformed the NASDAQ quite badly. Crypto, not Bitcoin. I think Bitcoin maybe has performed on a risk-adjusted basis, but crypto itself hasn't done really well. And specifically, if I look at Ethereum, Ethereum's been a dog show relative to the S&P. In fact, the returns of Ethereum are the same returns that you have on the S&P with, you could say, a lot more risk. What makes you so confident?
Ethereum's a tough horse to be on at the moment. By that, I would guess I would say Bitcoin, and I think the coin which a lot of people reached for on that dip was Solana, because it just feels like the adoption coin of this cycle. But I think we underperformed, and I think that was mainly, like I said, because we were the only real risk market open over that weekend, and people just went to hammer it. I don't think many people were doing the yen carry trade in crypto. No one was getting yen margin loans to buy Bitcoin. Maybe a few people, but I don't think Japanese banks were giving them out hand over fist. So I thought that's what happened. I thought we saw a little bit of a rebound. Interestingly, up until that point, we'd had a kind of a loose correlation. In fact, it was kind of a negative correlation with tech stocks. One thing I do think as well is that if tech stocks continue to head lower, weirdly, I think that probably increases the chances of a Trump election win. And I think crypto will probably outperform if those odds continue.
Listen, from your mouth to God's ears, because if I look at the forecast right now, it was 50% in Kamala Harris's favor an hour ago. It's now 49% Harris and 50% Trump. It's certainly not the whitewash that the market was looking for. And I saw a chart earlier this week where the chart actually followed the percentage probability of Trump winning. In other words, as Trump's probability went down, so did the price of Bitcoin. Does this worry you? Are you worried? When you look at the odds moving in Kamala Harris's favor, do you think this is like a real thing? Like Kamala Harris could actually win?
Yeah, 100%. I think she could win. I think you got to follow betting markets. I think Nate Silver, who's predicted the last two pretty well, came out. He has Kamala ahead at the moment. I think it's going to be very, very close. What I do think is each scenario is looking less bearish. I think the Trump scenario, you probably have, you could have a Solana ETF. You could even get regulation passed through Congress over the next 2 years, which would really open up like RWAs for all the different change. You can get bullish on even on ETH in that scenario. But I think with the Kamala win, she seems to be softening her approach. There's been this Harris for crypto movement over the last couple of days, being led by Mark Cuban.
Don't tell me you're buying that shit.
I don't think it's going to be as bad as Biden.
I think it's going to be the same. Tom, you were nodding. So you were nodding.
Yeah.
Tell me you're on my you're on my camp here, and
I think this is all like a very nice honeymoon period for the Harris camp, and I think it's very unrealistic she has any real chance of winning the election. If you look at almost all the swing state polls, they're still marginally in favor in Trump, and we've learned from the last elections that even in polls, people don't like to say they're going to vote for Trump. The election is really going to hinge on one state, and that's Pennsylvania, it seems. If you look, that swings almost all of the other states, and her lack of selection of the Pennsylvania governor as her potential VP is interesting in my mind, and probably it's a slight to a lot of people in that state. And she picked a Democratic-leaning guy who has some, I think, questionable military history that the Republicans are probably going to lean into in Minnesota. So I'm not really sure the calculus there. I think the Republicans are kind of letting her have the day in the sun, and then going to circle back with a pretty aggressive all-out campaign and as we get closer to the election. And I don't know about you guys. You've seen the videos of her. I can't imagine she's going to be a very forceful debater. It's going to be more on just Trump to. I must say,
the one thing that actually worries me is a debate. So I'll tell you why. I think Trump's not a very good debater. He has a couple of issues and he keeps repeating the same things over and over again. I actually think that she's a very good orator, and I think that one of her strengths is that she's a very logical. She breaks things down clearly. She speaks very well. She's very convincing. I mean, don't get me wrong. I think that her policies are, well, the policies that she's adopted are inherited are a bunch of garbage. But I do think that Trump is not a very impressive debater. I think that Trump should have annihilated Joe Biden. And if you look at what he did with Joe Biden, he beat him, but he did not annihilate him. He could have done way better. And I think that if he was debating Newsom or if he was debating Kamala Harris, I think he'd have a much tougher time.
It looks like they might not do a debate though, right? I think Trump pulled out the ABC one.
They will. This always happens.
It has to be on Fox. But like you said, I don't think Trump needs to debate. I think Kamala hasn't been asked a question in 2 weeks. I think he's probably going to wait to see how she does under scrutiny herself, and then they can decide. But Trump doesn't necessarily need a debate this time. I would agree with actually your take there. It's his to lose that debate, in my opinion.
Look, I must say, I'm as bullish. I'm as bullish as everyone else. The one cloud that I have is the 𝗏𝗢𝗥𝗗 cloud. That's the, I'm looking at all the. You got a Bitcoin ETF. You have an ETH ETF. You have increasing liquidity cycle. You have rate cuts around the corner. I mean, I think the one good thing about what happened this week is that we cemented the rate cuts. Before this, we were like, maybe there's going to be rate cuts. Maybe there's not going to be rate cuts in September. After this, market's forecasting 2 rate cuts in September. So like a double rate cut in September. I think, by the way, before we get the rate cut time in September, that becomes 1 rate cut, like a 0.25 bips. But at 25 bips, I don't think we get a 50 bips rate cut as the first rate cut. I just can't see that happening. But I do think we cemented it. So I think going into the later half of the year with what Tom said, we've got increased liquidity, we've got rate cuts. I think that's a very, very, very good environment for Bitcoin. And I think, as you can see, when you look at the markets are kind of possibly agreeing with me, because you've got Bitcoin rallying back into, back into the wedge here. The one token that isn't rallying back into the wedge, and this is where I want to bring 𝗤𝗧𝗧 into discussion. And the reason why I want to bring 𝗤𝗧𝗧 into discussion is because I don't know if you remember, but the last time we had you on the show and I asked you guys, Sol or ETH, you said to me, ETH. You said ETH is still the biggest ecosystem. There's still a lot happening on ETH. The Sol ETH chart doesn't look good. I mean, I can quickly take you to the Sol ETH chart over here. That's a Sol ETH chart. It's broken up. It's now in absolute price discovery. I must say, I've never seen so much negative sentiment against ETH. People have absolutely capitulated. I mean, I just want to read you some tweets. How can the ETH holders be voluntarily enduring so much pain just to yield a 2x in the cycle? ETH's year-to-date performance is half of the S&P. God, this thing might end up like Gateway or Compact of L1s. Bad news, ETH equals down. Good news, ETH equals down. No news, ETH equals down. FUD on Twitter, ETH equals down. No FUD on Twitter, ETH equals down. Market's good, ETH equals down. Market's not good, ETH equals down. ETH capitulates, ETH equals down. ETH ever so slightly up, ETH down. I hate ETH. What a garbage coin. If you're so smart, why aren't you rich? Turns out it's because you were holding Ethereum. I mean, I've never seen sentiment like this against ETH. People are comparing it to Litecoin or Zcash. And for those of us who've been here for a long time, we know that those are like possibly the 2 most washed out, disappointing tokens from the last cycle. I'm very keen to hear now what your view is around ETH, and specifically whether if I gave you the $10,000 that I gave you last time back, whether you'd put it into Sol or whether you'd still put it down into ETH.
You asked me ETH or Sol last time. I don't remember that. I just remember you asking me about ETH. But yeah, I mean, I'm as you know, I was bullish Sol from the bear market from the beginning. I'm still bullish Sol. I do think ETH is overhated here. I had more ETH than Sol, sort of heading into this carnage, and then ETH dumped so much that now I have more Sol than ETH again. Yeah, I still think when you're doing venture investments, which I know you do as well, Ran, you just see that it's definitely changing where there's a lot more quality projects coming to Sol, but ETH still has like the density of talent, the network effect, the ecosystem. I do think the arguments against ETH are valid. Like the L2 roadmap seems to have been a mistake. Interoperability between L2s sucks. ETH's just kind of like a DA layer now and a settlement layer. But yeah, I don't know. I actually don't even know. I read all the FUD and I'm just sort of like numb to it. But I don't sell my ETH. So maybe I should just sell my ETH because I don't have a very good or like articulate bull case other than the fact that it's just the ecosystem that has the most talent density and the most interesting apps being built still.
So here it is. I mean, this is just a layout of like liquid staking apps. There are 100 liquid staking apps on Ethereum. There are 435 lending apps. There are 81 bridges, 1,381 DEXs, 10 restaking apps. The list goes on and on and on around, you know, how big and how strong and how powerful this Ethereum ecosystem is. Also, I broke it down yesterday when I did a show where I said that I almost see the ETF as the equivalent of a Binance listing for TradFi. So you know how tokens pump when they get a Binance listing? The equivalent of a Binance listing for TradFi is when they get an ETF. And then all of a sudden, you know, you got this whole like big world of TradFi that can actually buy into the token. And I think right now on Binance, there's 2 tokens listed. One of them is Bitcoin, one of them is ETH. And I don't think the boomers care what crypto Twitter says. I think the boomers say, I want exposure to crypto. And there could be a massive catch-up trade. And the reason why I say there could be a massive catch-up trade is that, I mean, if you look at it, I had a tweet here. BlackRock have $20 billion worth of Bitcoin, and they have $563 million worth of ETH, and there's a hell of a lot of catching up to do. So I must say, I'm an ETH bull. I do think Solana will outperform ETH on a percentage basis. On a risk-adjusted basis, maybe not, but I do think Solana outperforms. I'm keen to hear, Tom, Duncan, I'm keen to hear your voice. I haven't heard your voice today. Keen to hear your voice.
ETH or just general stuff. I think just a quick note from Monday was just how quickly the Bank of Japan responded, and just goes to show how increasingly trapped all these central banks are. You know, Japan has even worse debt than, like, everyone talks about the US debt situation, but Japan has a significantly worse situation over there. And I think it's just showing, you know, dollar too strong. The world's in trouble on the liquidity front. You know, now yen too strong, the world's in trouble. So it's just going to show how increasingly trapped central banks are and how bad this debt situation is. So I just think it's going to be like faster policy response to crisis in the future. And I think that's overall bullish. I agree with you on the Kamala stuff. I think that, you know, Bitcoin's probably insulated from that. You know, whether Democrats or Republicans get in, they're both spending more money. But Kamala could definitely put a damper on kind of the alts, which would suck because that's, you know, mostly where I think there's like interesting investments. But probably still fine for Bitcoin. On the ETH front, yeah, it's definitely been tough. I still think that the ETF will give it that kind of catch up trade reflexivity mania that I talked about last time, where it's like ETH goes up, which makes like TVL go up, which makes DeFi start spinning, you know, more fees in that ecosystem, a higher re-rating, more liquidity mining programs and all that stuff. I still think that trade's very much in play when crypto comes back in a bigger way and kind of mania comes back to the market. I think ETH will do well, but definitely when you look at just outside of the ETF, you know, the marginal buyer and marginal user is heading to Solana or an L2, which doesn't really send that much value back to ETH. So it's definitely tricky without the ETF. And then the last thing that I'll say is just, I feel like, you know, this narrative of Solana flipping ETH or becoming more popular does open this whole can of worms of, okay, you know, it was previously thought that like ETH couldn't be dethroned. And now if people are thinking, there's a chance of that happening.
I mean, every cycle, people think it's going to be this round, to be fair. Like, the ETH-Killer is, like, only older than the Bitcoin.
I know, but and then that happens, and it leads to, these alt L1 rallies. So outside of Solana, I wonder if there's another alt L1 that's interesting. I know you had Arthur Hayes on here the other day, and he's talking about Aptos.
No.
I don't know much about Aptos, but like, I wonder if there's going to be like another L1 trade like we saw in 2021 with like Luna and Sol and AVAX. I wonder if that happens again.
So just to jump in here, the reason we were able to have those trades in the past is because we were a hot ball of money sloshing around within a very small ecosystem. Price is set at the margin, price is set by flows. When you have these enormous TradFi flows coming in almost exclusively through Bitcoin and Ethereum, I think it's a real disservice to any portfolio not to have the majority of assets in there, because the steps to get on chain from there are still a big leap.
Yeah, for sure.
So, and I think it's a very easy sell, and like not to oversimplify it, but you just had Morgan Stanley the other day and their $1 trillion+ worth of assets across their RIA base to open that up to Bitcoin ETFs. Like, it's going to soon be open to Ethereum ETFs coming from TradFi. 10 years there. It's like, it's such an easy sell to my buddies I play golf with, or still in TradFi. It's like, okay, it has cash flows, it has yield. Okay, sometimes it's deflationary. Like, it's like a tech stock play. Okay, great. Like, let me allocate 1, 2, 3, 4, 5%. Like, I just don't want to miss the boat. And that in aggregate is billions of dollars of flows. So it's just like a very mid-curve play that I think is like, people on CT right now who are like just trading this stuff around just are getting lost in the weeds. And a lot of it's because of the flows that we're seeing drained from ETH, which has been accelerated and much faster than GBTC. If that's going to be done by the end of this month, just at the current pace we're at. So I think after that,
a quick question for you on the ETH ETF. Do you think that's like the bull case for ETH though? Because it seems like that is kind of what people are leaning on heavily, right?
So for the next few years, yes. But like Jose, I don't know about you, but we're VCs, so we invest a lot, obviously in private companies, and all the pre-seed and seed companies, no matter what, even if they're launching on Solana, have a plan for L2s, Ethereum, etc. And that's still where the confluence of developer mindshare and projects are. And my view on Ethereum is always like, if you give it enough time, like eventually they'll get down the roadmap. And if you consider the end state of these things as like commodities where transaction costs are almost zero, latency is almost zero, it's really going to come down to who's the most decentralized and censorship resistant, and that's always been resistant, and that's the play for Ethereum. It always has been.
I must say, I think that's why this is, for me, probably the best time to buy ETH. I've never seen sentiment as bad. We do have the Binance listing that people haven't paid attention to yet. I read this. It said, unpopular opinion. Boomers don't give a fuck about crypto sentiment in Ethereum. They don't know if Vitalik got a girlfriend. They see ETH as a cheaper Bitcoin. This could be the most hated rally in the world. To me, that was the one tweet. The other tweet was this one, which is Peter Brandt. Now, the reason why I'm quoting Peter Brandt, I think he's a very good chartist, but he prides himself on never, ever, ever thinking about the fundamentals. He always says, I don't care whether I'm trading corn or Bitcoin. It makes no difference to me. I'm just looking at the charts. As a chartist, he's come out and said, ETH, cumbersome, expensive, flawed, claims to be decentralized when it's not, Sol, user-friendly, great foundation. To me, this was like the bottom of the bottom. This is like when everybody hates ETH, even the chartists who pride themselves on not looking at anything fundamental other than lines on charts, when they start getting their emotions involved in a battle, then to me, that's like usually the bottom. So I think I'm calling the bottom here. I'm calling the bottom here for ETH relative to Bitcoin. Maybe not relative to, if the whole market goes down, I think the whole market goes down. We touched on another L1 and whether another L1 would compete with Solana. And you mentioned Arthur Hayes came in here and said Aptos. Is that still a discussion? Like, are we still discussing whether there's going to be a competing L1 ecosystem? Because in my mind, kind of like Solana is the L1, ETH is the L2 conduit, and then there may be specialist L1s which are used for specialist applications, maybe like injective for, like those kind of swaps or whatever is required. But do we still think that, are we still looking for a cheaper, faster L1? Is that still, like, as investors, are we still like thinking that there might be someone to take on Solana?
I think so. I think each cycle, I kind of agree with what Duncan said. One thing that this cycle has kind of showed me is that we'll always come up with, faster, better tech. And I think that's something that's weird about crypto in general. It's kind of comes from the Bitcoin is gold narrative, is that we're at the bleeding edge of tech, but we actually don't really want our tech to ever be replaced. Or we need it to be iterated, and sometimes ETH can be a very long iteration cycle. So to be honest, I never really get married to bags. It just kind of told me this cycle that maybe that isn't just a belief that, ETH is going to be our payment system in 50 years. Whereas Bitcoin, I think, could be around as digital gold in 50 years. And I think that's something that if we're going to be in crypto and we're going to be building the new, rails of finance, I think you've always got to expect that there's going to be something new and shiny. Now, what I do think is this cycle, Sol is just so far ahead on the adoption curve than any of the other L1s. You have certain dApps on things like Near or let's say Sui, which sometimes have high transactions or maybe artificially high users at times. But Sol just seems so far ahead. And to me, I know this is what you just said, we're calling the bottom of ETH. Sol is still a quarter of the price of ETH. In terms of market cap.
I agree. I do think
sitting here and going neck and neck.
I think
Sol is 3% of the crypto market. 3%.
I think Sol wins in the L1 set, fast L1 race. But let me throw a curveball at you. Telegram, ton. You spoke about users, and I think there was one race to get cheap, fast transactions. Sol won that race. And as a result, the prize that they're reaping is that they have a whole lot of meme traders and very quick derivative traders and swap traders and whatever else is built on Sol. But Telegram has a user base that no one else in crypto can access. I've heard numbers, I don't know, call it 800 million, 900 million people. Who cares? It's really the easiest way to tap into crypto is to use your Telegram app. They've proven it with these games, which are not real games, but I think you know what I'm saying. They've proven it with the hamster game and the tap game and the Notcoin game and whatever else. What about Ton? Do you guys look at Ton as a serious contender for the L1 race, or is it just like a passing phase? Which the price has been doing relatively well, but we also know the tokens are very, very, very tightly held. I don't think that the tokens are out in the market freely tradable like everyone thinks they are. Is Ton in your minds a contender for the L1 race?
Yeah, I think it is. It reminds me of BNB. You can have these sort of coins which are attached to a centralized entity, which that entity can also help promote and do well. Build gaming, build certain dApps alongside. Telegram's clearly going to be valued incredibly high. They could raise at ridiculous valuations. I think they could build out a whole ecosystem there. So I think Ton is one of the examples where it could go like a 2x. The FDV is about 30 billion, right? It's not tiny.
It's not tiny at all. It's quite high actually. It is about. Today, the FDV is 31 billion. So that's the FDV is currently 31 billion. Solana's FDV, just to give the viewers perspective, Solana's FDV right now is almost 100 billion, 93 billion. And if we just compare them both to Ethereum's FDV is about 300 billion. So, there's a 10x between Ton and Ethereum, and there's a 3 or 4x between Ethereum and Solana. Just if you're talking about the catch-up trade. But Tom, I'm interested to hear your views. Telegram, Ton, is it a real ecosystem or is it just a passing phase because it's linked to a very highly used app?
We have a small liquid position in Ton, and it's for a lot of the reasons you outlined. And I think a lot of these things start off as sort of games, but rather than a lot of the issues we have with crypto, we're trying to force users to come to the applications. You just have to bring applications to the user base that's already there. So it's going to start off as hamster games and clicker games. It's going to progress into some sort of more social utilities, and then you're going to see actual useful applications eventually, in my mind. And even if it just becomes, the WhatsApp or WeChat or something like that, like the all-in-one app, that's immensely useful. My bear case for crypto more broadly is if we just become better decentralize or better finance and just basically upgrade stable coins, traditional financial rails, like that is a multi-trillion-dollar industry. Ton is like a very easy way to do that just through their payments mechanisms they have. So generally interested just because of the user base they have there already.
I must say, on your point, the one thing that I noticed this week was when the circuit breakers were going off on the Nikkei and the Korean stock exchange and whatever else, DeFi just kept ticking, bro. DeFi just kept doing its thing.
Yeah. And just I wanted to make this point earlier, but I don't want to jump in. So like the way traditional markets generally trade, a lot of assets are traded through HFTs, vol control funds, and things that actually use the VIX as their exposure toggle. So when the VIX spikes, that's centered to their risk mechanism, and they have to delever. So when you see the VIX spike to a level that's actually even higher than the COVID crash, these guys automatically have to sell. So there's not really discretion involved. So over time, as that kind of comes down, they automatically start adding back exposure. Usually after you have a vol event like this, it's 4 to 5 weeks historically before you've actually added back vol. And the best way to look at that is, the VIX is in a curve, looking at the front month and the second month and seeing when they flip. So when the second month goes above the front month, that usually takes 4 to 5 weeks. It's actually almost happening within a few days here. So that's telling me that it's actually a pretty good time to start adding back risk, because equity buyers are going to continue to come in. And as we mentioned earlier, the correlations there really still filter into the crypto markets.
Yeah, I mean, look, I said it earlier, going back to Japan trade. I said it earlier this week. I said what the Japanese central bank did was they made a pinky promise not to raise rates anymore if they believed that it was going to affect markets. It was a pinky promise, that's what it was. It's not a signed document. They're not held to anything. They just made a pinky promise. We're not going to raise rates if we think it's going to cause market instability. But let me tell you, if inflation starts going up in Japan, there's only one tool that these people have, and that is to increase interest rates to start slowing things down. And instead of letting people drown in inflation, that they will break their pinky promise and that they will unwind that cash and carry trade. Now, I don't believe, like JP Morgan says, that half the cash and carry trade is unwound. In fact, I'm more a believer in this, where according to Deutsche Bank, the yen cash and carry trade amounts to a whopping 20 trillion, or 505% of the Japanese GDP. Now, no one knows the real number because there's leverage on the leverage as well. But I think this is very similar to Silicon Valley Bank when the Treasury came out and said we'll backstop the banks. The problem didn't go away. The mismatch between the durations of the Treasury notes and the bank's obligations didn't actually go away. They just put a Band-Aid on it, and then therefore people didn't worry anymore, and it was business as usual. And so I think the problem still remains there. Anyway, Jose, I want to go back there. Let's go to Telegram, Ton. Real thing, not real thing. Any other L1s that actually interest you?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think an L1 at this point has to have something really differentiated about it. And the way I see L1s, the value of it is basically should be in the long term, which can be very long in crypto, correlated to the value of the application ecosystem built on top of it. The more valuable applications are built on top of the L1, the more valuable it should be. And I think the customer, the real customer of an L1 is app developers, and giving something differentiated to app developers that will make them come on there and build cool stuff. And I mean, Ton, from a tech perspective, I think it's significantly worse than most of the other L1s. And its differentiation is basically distribution, right? It's like the distribution chain. So you come on here, you build some apps, and you have access to Telegram's entire user base or whatever. We've seen a few good teams built on there. We've invested in a few. There's also a lot of crap, a lot of teams just sort of money chasing. And that kind of tends to happen when you have a distribution chain. You saw the same thing with Binance Smart Chain, which I do think is the best comp. I also think it's hard to understate the potential though of this, the distribution that Telegram has. There's no one in crypto, and even outside of crypto, you're hard pressed to find an app with 800 million users with the kind of daily active user numbers that you have with Telegram. So if they can nail that, it could be big. I haven't it's getting better, but I don't think they've nailed the UX yet. And I do think there are other L1s which have, I think the fast L1 race is kind of tough. Solana is doing really well there. I do think you can see catch-up trades with 𝗬𝗢 and Aptos because, between those two, I'm far more bullish on 𝗬𝗢. I think it has the better dev community, the better tech.
Why are you just
based on
why are you? I'll tell you why I'm more bullish on 𝗬𝗢 but I'm interested to hear your view, because I mean, out of those two, I have picked a horse. I picked the 𝗬𝗢 horse over the Aptos horse, but I'm keen to hear your view as to why you did it.
Yeah, we've spoken to and we've had developers work on both, and most people prefer the 𝗬𝗢 version, or most people that we've spoken to prefer the 𝗬𝗢 version of Move. And then also in terms of ecosystem, I've just seen cooler stuff on 𝗬𝗢 than I have on Aptos. Like there's actually some interesting kind of gaming projects on 𝗬𝗢, some interesting social projects on 𝗬𝗢, whereas on Aptos, I just haven't seen as much cool stuff.
So for me,
that's honestly the main, yeah.
For me, it's a culture thing. I've dealt with both. When I deal with Aptos, it feels like I'm dealing with an American corporate. Everything feels like I'm dealing with an American corporate. You know, and I'll tell you, for me, it's anecdotal, but when I met Mo, who was the founder, and I said, you know, I meet all the founders at conferences and I interview them. And to be honest, I actually fight to get on the channel because it's amazing distribution for them. And he was like, oh, no, you need to run this by my PR team, which is the kind of thing that I get when I'm dealing with Facebook, or the kind of thing that I get that I'm dealing with a normal American corporate structure. Now, I don't believe that you can succeed in crypto with the mindset of an American corporate structured company. I just don't think that that's the ethos that gets things done.
I agree.
𝗬𝗢 is much
and
more...
there's also like a superiority, right? Like the kind of like everything in crypto is stupid. We're the grown-ups. We're coming here to fix this, which like there's a lot of people who have tried that. And it's never worked out well.
Yeah, and crypto is like majority mindshare versus fundamentals at this point, and distribution, as you mentioned, 𝗓𝗧, and interacting with both teams. 𝗬𝗢 is very, very BD focused and very, very focused on distribution, when Aptos is taking all the very slow steps that are not going to get you anywhere in crypto, especially with integrating and bringing protocols onto your platform.
Yeah, I must say. So I think the consensus is actually, let's just quickly, just for shits and giggles, let's actually just look at the market caps between the two of them, because we've all got the same perception. But let's see, the fully diluted right now on Aptos is 6 billion, and the fully diluted right now on 𝗬𝗢 is 7 billion. So very close, very, 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 very close. I think the market hasn't yet made up its mind. If we pass the layer 1 stage, so let's say we pass the layer 1 stage, and then we're moving on to the application stage. Now, I mean, the one application that we all know works very well is trading. I think if meme coins have showed us anything, it's that crypto gives human beings the ability to trade anything across borders very, 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 very quickly. You know, I think that the whole idea was we wanted to create the internet of value transfer, and we created the internet of value transfer. And I think meme coins is the ultimate proof of that we know how to trade things. But you can't tell me that after so many years, the only killer applications that we've got are the ability to trade fake cats and dogs, the ability to trade memes, the ability to trade perpetuals. What else? What else is being built that's exciting you guys here? Any narratives, any like everything?
Yes. Yeah, I think payments is like an obvious one that is going to happen.
Store
like
of value
PayPal,
payments, yeah.
USD is happening. Yeah, so I think you have Bitcoin as the store of value. You have stable coins / payments is a massive one. You just have the general casino / speculation. I think the RWAs will be a big one in the future, especially with the ETH ETF. I could see BlackRock leaning into their RWA theme as like a way to sell it. Also, you have VanEck, like the head of VanEck's son, or the founder of VanEck's son, is launching a stable coin to compete with USDC. So like you have the stable coin and RWA narrative that kind of ties into ETH. And then, the big one is probably gaming. I think that we haven't had the real breakout moment on that yet. But I think that I'm still convinced that'll be huge. And also gaming has just gotten wrecked recently. I don't know if there's any
okay, let's talk about, I think I agree with you that gaming hasn't been amazing, but I think that also people forget that building really good games, specifically on a new tech stack, like it takes 5 years to build a game on the old tech stack, which everybody knows. Now we're moving on to a new tech stack which most people don't actually understand, right? So the question now is there any game that is really ready to give us mass adoption?
I know Jose's done some venture investing in this area, so like maybe he could give an answer. One that I like that I've invested in and I own a lot of and has gotten killed is this 𝗦𝗢𝗥𝗄𝗢 game, and they're like trying to rebuild something similar to Minecraft. Yeah, so that's one that I like. I think that those kind of like Minecraft, World of Warcraft, those kind of games that you can really like sink a lot of time into and are timeless, and have like a lot of items in game, which then you can like create NFTs for and give value towards, and are kind of like open box, like Roblox, like that type of thing. I think there's massive potential there. You know, you watch the movie Ready Player One. If you haven't seen that yet, like that is the bull case for crypto gaming. It's basically a world where they create like a metaverse essentially, and everyone just, the metaverse is better than real life, and everyone just like lives in there and has these suits on so they can like walk around in the metaverse, and all the value in their life is in the metaverse, not in real life, because it's just way better. And you know, obviously that sounds dystopian, but the truth is like a lot of more people are spending more times playing these games. I think 1/3 of all kids under 16 in the US play Roblox. So, you know, that's an absurd number. And, you know, as people spend more time online, they're going to give more value to these digital things. And you just see that with stuff like, you know, Fortnite skins, CSGO trading of skins, like these popular games, the items in it are worth a lot of money and people really care about them. So if you get a crypto game.
I've heard that since Wax Protocol launched in 2017. I've heard about how amazing the skins market was going to be, and how I think his name was William Quigley was going to take over the entire skins market using Wax Protocol. And here we are a couple of years later, and let me just see what the FDV of Wax Protocol is. I think I'm still an investor, actually, funny enough. Okay, still got
I don't think anyone's nailed it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Jose, I know you've got a passion in this area. I know that like you think you've got some games that you're looking at and you think maybe the real deal.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've made like over 40 investments in gaming. So we're definitely bullish on the sector. Like most of us at 𝗙𝗢𝗥𝗗 are gamers. I'm still very bullish on the metaverse. As hated as the metaverse is, I actually think like that's definitely. I think it's here actually. I think Fortnite is basically the closest thing to the metaverse that exists right now. Like 800 million users in a shared digital space where they have like shared property rights. There's people. They basically pulled off the crypto thesis without crypto. There's like people building their own maps on there. There's people building their own items. It's like I do think crypto makes can make that significantly better. And there's been like so much investment into crypto gaming. And there's one specifically that we've invested in recently that I think could be the one. Like I'm really excited about. We've been playing it every weekend.
Do you share?
It's not live yet, and I don't know. I'll share it on our next time I'm on. It'll probably be live, and I can share. I think I told you about it, but like I'm sure there's other people that have picks like that. But yeah, I do think someone's gonna pull off the sort of AAA quality game with crypto enabled. And if you think about, I know people point at like
what's
some of
your
the examples
timing
of crypto gaming to say
what's your timing? Because you said you think someone's gonna pull it off. When? I mean, I know someone's eventually going to put it off, but is it this year?
I think
or
these
is it
guys
in 5
pull it
years?
off this year. Yeah, I think these guys pull it off this year.
Holy
I think like
shit.
we see, yeah. I mean, I really think this could be the game that brings in like 100 million.
All right, I mean, come on, you got to tell us who it is. I mean, you can't tease us like this. Just tell us what the game is. Doesn't matter if it's a token or no token. Just tell us what the game is. Maybe we can just go play the game.
I just can't yet. I'll tell you on the next show. I promise. I can't yet. I'll tell you on the next show. I know it sucks the tease. I'm sorry to all the banter peeps, but I'll share it as soon as I can.
I think I have a feeling of what it is, but I'm not going to mention it in case it's the wrong one, and I'm not going to put you on the spot. Mando, what do you think? Is there going to be a game? Are you a gamer?
I am, and I'm not bullish on crypto gaming. My honest opinion is that you could create GTA and you could create a crypto token. I think the actual, if you trade in-game cryptocurrencies, particularly that define the economics of the game, I think it debases the game. You get kind of bot-style users, players that are really just using it to basically farm the coin. I think it often takes away from the value of the game. We've seen a few more plays in like the infrastructure layer this cycle, but they haven't really even worked. Interoperability isn't really there. And my honest view is that crypto gaming is really good for VC investment, but doesn't really create that much value, because often the game then takes 4 years to make, and they've got this big lead up time where everyone's just dumping the token in tokenomics, and you just set these horrific charts in every single crypto gaming chart I've ever seen. So my view is that crypto gaming has a long way to come, and I'm not even too sure if it's a game issue that will fix it, even though I do think that the securitization, or let's say the tokenization of some of these in-game assets, I think could be a good thing. Like, my most bullish thing for crypto in terms of other utility, other than the obvious ones, which, to be honest, I think people downplay, but I do think payments and being able to trade is a massive thing. But I do think that if you can tokenize assets, whether they're digital or not, and you create the payment rails for them to be able to trade, I think if we get enough regulation around that, particularly in the US, I think that brings on trillions of dollars of assets to be traded on the blockchain every single day. That's what I would get really bullish on in terms of utility. At the moment, the reason why we're only really trading cat and dogs coins is because it's one of the few things that people seem to feel okay about from a regulatory standpoint. If you could securitize, there are what, $500 to $700 trillion worth of assets. If you could start securitizing some of those and allowing them to trade on chain.
The problem with those assets is that those assets have a value. So like, that a property, if property's worth $100 million, if you can make it liquid and you can make it cross-border and you can open cross-border liquidity, maybe you can increase the value by 1 or 2% or maybe 3% or 5%, depending where the building's at. But they have a value. And there's no fun in trading. I think people are trading meme coins because they're dopamine addicts who don't want to go to the casino and don't feel like playing, poker that night. And so, what they do is they go and play on meme coins because it's just as much fun. So,
but the rails of TradFi are the Swift T+3 or T+2 payment rails, right? It's quite archaic. It does need a refresh. It's not like we're sitting there going like, it's incredible there. I think some markets have moved to T+0, but even then, like, it is archaic. I've worked in a bank for many years, and it's, the tech is awful. Everyone always complains about the tech.
Just on the gaming point, though, the game doesn't have to be. I feel like when you're talking about farming the coin and stuff, you're kind of anchoring to existing crypto gaming designs, which I agree are flawed. Although even those, you can argue, like, you saw highly or like flawed games get massive user bases off just the incentive scheme within them. Imagine when you get a really good game with the same incentive scheme, right? And I think, and we're seeing stuff across the design space where like the token, there's no crypto element to the game. It literally, the token just sits sort of outside it, and you have like it's like linked to the revenues that the game generates or something in some way, which is just like securitization on the blockchain, to be honest. And like, I think that in itself is already value add. I think like with rabid fans of games, like if they could own a piece of the game, that's already super valuable. And then you're seeing like much more interesting things on top of that, like across the entire kind of design space, between like the Clash of Clans style games or Minecraft style games with user generated content, or even like economy games like Eve. Like there's just so many experiments going on. I'd be incredibly surprised if we don't see like one breakout success in the next 2 years. But then I did say that 2 years ago.
𝗡𝗢𝗥𝗗 has been a breakout success, right? Like they say that it's got hundreds of millions of users. I'm bullish on 𝗏.
Which one? Hamster Combat?
I think the L1s capture a lot of the value, right? Of these clicky games. Even any game, like you see adoption on. I just feel like the tokens themselves of these, whenever it like gets down to utility level of like a gaming token, it breaks down.
Can we just agree that Hamster is not a game? I mean, as a gamer, you cannot say that tap 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 tap
I'm
tap
just
tap.
saying it's got users, and I think that whatever it is, I would buy 𝗏rather than buy the Hamster Combat coin.
Yes.
And that's just kind of what I would say for all of these games. I like them for the adoption maybe of the L1. Or the trading of in-game assets, but for me, the value accrual there is really to like the L1.
Yeah. All right, guys, listen, we are out of time for today. Thank you again for coming on Banter. Thanks for the weekly alpha, Jose. I'm going to hold you next time. I've got a memory like an elephant. I'm going to, just like I remembered your Sol ETH trade, I'm going to remember that you promised to give us what the game is next time that you come on here. So I'll see you guys again soon. Thank you so much for the alpha. To you guys on the Banter Fam, we'll be back here on Sunday. On Sunday, we're going to be doing a live meme show again. So get ready and bring your DJness. Also, remember, if you haven't yet taken out a VPN. I did tell you in the beginning of the show that you've got to take your VPN out. Go and take it out now. You're paying $3 a month to protect your crypto. Come on, go and do it. I'll see you guys again on Sunday. Until then, trade well, my friends.